how do you configure a machine that doesn't just do one thing well, that does a bunch of things well? Xeon is like a bus, but the core is like a Corvette. It can take you and maybe one other person, and it'll get you there real fast. But the bus may go a little slower, but it can take you and all your friends and family there all together.
I need a bunch of power, so I need something that can hit hard, but I also need that thing to last, because if it drains the battery in like an hour, that's not helping me out.
You know, everyone's had the experience of taking their laptop and it's hot. That's power consumption.
If you were gonna outfit somebody and you were like, okay, I was gonna get a Revit machine, I'd get this joker. What would you get?
That little frustration factor, you know, and you click on something Revit and it like does that little circle and then, okay, it's selected. It's like, oh, okay, it's selected. That's all about. My favorite part about the online meetings is everyone's the same height. When we all started coming back together, really, I was like, everyone's going to know that I'm 5'8". Oh, no. And then, you know, we're all different heights. It's okay.
It's okay.
You know,
it's fine. It's just funny how your perception works there. Yeah. Because you're trying to, it used to be, you remember back in the day where we just had the phones and no Zooms. Sure. And then you got somebody like kind of almost painted in your head and you had that first meeting.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met Wayne Wells.
Yeah.
And I had a picture of Wayne in my head. I had been talking to this guy for a year. And I just had this painting of him, nothing like it at all. Yeah. And I know when I met him and shook his hand, it was like, I was almost like,
You both were doing that.
I was like, you're sizing each other up like, no.
Well, that was legitimate phone calls too. So yeah, like you're going off of voice and you got nothing else. I remember doing that.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't.
I remember doing that with fabricators all the time. You know, you get on the phone and they're screaming at you, and you're like, "Wow, you get this visual image of Satan, honestly." In your head.
How often are you two camera on in a meeting? In a smaller meeting, at least.
Smaller meeting, definitely.
All the time.
The large meetings are the ones I go like completely incognito. I don't want to be the one guy on camera.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one on highlight. Like nobody's got the camera on. You're the one on highlight that everybody's looking at.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to be that guy.
I don't care. I really don't care.
You do like being the center of attention, though.
It's just part of it's just part of my life.
You definitely elevate yourself when you do turn the camera on.
Yeah.
And you know the avatars are coming too, guys. I don't know if you've turned on avatar functions.
What?
Yeah. The only problem is like when you're not actually like expressing yourself or talking, it takes on a very smug face. It's like a very like half smile. I'm like, that's not how he looks. He doesn't look that smug usually. Like, why are you looking at me like that, Avatar? Like it's
you need to back down. I don't know about you.
Easy. The smirk.
Mr. Alien guy. No.
Well,
my kids love this.
The like VR, like you're gonna have an avatar with that, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've got a lot
some
of
that's
thoughts
a little,
on that.
I don't know.
Have you seen some of the avatars that are generated from like a VR headset?
I've seen some.
MR, XR.
The way you said that makes me unsure of what I've seen.
So
I've seen
like
cartoony, very innocent ones.
I could wear a headset, but it's like it's reading my facial expressions, and it's like like projecting an avatar back. It looks so messed up, man. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It'll get better. Like we know this.
It has to.
But right now, it's just comical. It's comically bad. But hey. That's innovation.
The kids victimize me. Like with the iPhone, they'll get a video of you and you're like, stop videoing. You know, like they just love the interaction of like, I got a video of that or whatever. And then you look at it and you get like this pink unicorn avatar over you. Right. And they're like, you're like, I did not give you permission. That doesn't go anywhere.
That's a Bluey episode right there, man. Like straight up. That is a Bluey episode.
You gotta like Bluey.
Yeah, I love Bluey. Bluey's great. Bluey's my life right now with a 5 and 3-year-old. It's all I watch.
I smell another sponsorship for the Construction Brothers podcast.
Bluey.
Yes.
Bluey.
I'd be all right with it. That's cool. You know, I'd chill with Bluey. You know, the dad and the mom are actually pretty great. Like,
I love it.
The dad's awesome. I'm like, yeah. And it's funny. You see him, you're like, I didn't expect that. Same thing with the phone call.
Have you tried the thing with the dogs? Like, have you tried to let your dog watch Bluey?
Eddie, this is sore topic for me right now.
I'm sorry.
My dog just died, bro.
I'm sorry.
Like, really? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right.
You might want to cut that one out, Cook.
It's
nothing funny about it.
In real,
very
in
sad.
real
it's
life,
not.
true
Very
story.
sad. Very sad.
It is funny in that I just did bring that up very innocently. God rest his soul. I love Coop, man.
Listen, Cooper's...
He was the office dog for a while.
R.I.P. All right. Cooper was a great dog.
Cooper
he was
was a good
9.5
dog.
years old. And did I tell you about what happened? Like he started having seizures and stuff. Sam had to put him down like a couple weeks ago while I was in San Antonio.
Oh, that's tough.
Crappy thing to happen. Sorry, guys. I'm airing all of my baggage here today.
On record.
It's on record. I don't know. I will also go on record saying he made a habit out of taking a whiz on our bed. So
That softened the blow at all of...
Oh, yeah. It definitely did. I'm not going to lie, man. I was kind of like, well, darn, that really stinks. But also...
now we can get that new mattress. Honey.
Now we're good, you know?
We're safe now.
Yeah, we're safe.
I heard there are plans for another dog.
There are plans for another dog. We're totally going to get another dog.
Like Ellie wanted a dog and a kitty.
What was hilarious is that we told Ellie, hey, honey, like we sat down with her and we're like, so just quiet. And we're just trying to be caring with our 5-year-old, you know, this is a dog that she's had since she's never known life without Cooper. And we're just like, honey, Cooper's kidneys, they stopped working and he died. And, you know, we're like getting ready to like hold her and hug her and stuff. And she's like, oh, well, we could just get a new dog or a kitty cat. We could get a kitty cat. It was like, wow, this backfired real fast.
We're moving on.
Resilience. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I wasn't aware of the fact that this was actually going to start the show.
I had no idea.
These little false starts are really messing with me, man. Like, I got to figure out when we're actually starting.
We got to capture all of it, man. We start rolling and we just see what comes out, right?
Maybe some of our best content, maybe some of our worst. We don't know. I just like to know where we're going. Are we for real?
Do you see the red lights? That means we are.
I know, but there's like a little bit of a intro. Okay, anyway.
Well, Ken, thanks for joining us this week, man.
Happy to be here. Happy
so
to be
awkward.
here.
Are you really? Are you?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think we're doing good so far, right? You start with dead dog. You can only go up from there.
Only up.
Yeah,
right?
really.
Yeah, that's it, man.
We didn't get to the other intro.
Well, now we'll get to that in a minute. Let's start with who you are and what you do, because we've been working together for a little while, you and I.
Yeah, we have. So, Ken Flannigan, I work for Dell. And I work specifically on the client product side. So the PCs that people have in their, next to them, in front of them, that they carry around with them, fixed, mobiles, ruggeds. And I lead strategy for the building industry and geospatial industries. And I do also some with manufacturing right now. Mm-hmm. So it's a very strange job. It's a very, as I think you know, Tyler, it's a very strange job. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that a company like Dell would even employ someone. If you're watching, thank you. But it's a little surprising to people because my background's not in hardware. Yeah. And I kind of avoided hardware. Yeah. I was a guy that's like, just give me whatever. I'll push it. I'll still get frustrated, but I'll push it. Yeah. I was a software guy, and still kind of consider myself a software guy that now exists in a hardware world. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I lead strategy on the product team. Okay. So precision workstations, rugged laptops and tablets, actually where those are engineered, and I bring the voice of the industry into those engineering groups. Yeah. So they know what they're being used for and where they're being challenged and where growth is and how we need to engage to make our customers more satisfied as well as grow the market. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about the previous life, right? Like, what were you doing before this?
Yeah, I started my career as a draftsman. Yeah. I was a draftsman for an architecture firm in Austin, Texas, Fields and Associates, and we did schools. And I absolutely fell in love with drafting. And I'm talking 2D AutoCAD, and doing reflected ceiling plans and numbering doors. And, I think the very first thing I ever designed was like a floor pattern. And you're just spending all this time and thought process on it. And, but at the time I got to learn architecture and kind of learn the ecosystem around architects. because no one is just solo. Absolutely nobody. So it's fascinating, but the technology, I mean, you're talking, this is like 2006, 2007, technology is really getting better. And I read the articles around Revit saying, hey, draftsman, you're going to be replaced. And so I bought a book and I learned Revit. And then I used a trial version of Revit to sell my boss to buy a license. And so I fell in love with Revit. I was one of those guys, like down the rabbit hole. I did a high school football stadium outside of Austin, Texas, in Revit. And it was like, I'm a huge football fan, so it was like awesome. I mean, it was really something that kind of took over my life for a little bit. But the technology is where my heart was. And I got recruited to a reseller, an Autodesk reseller in the Dallas area. Uprooted my family from Austin, took us to Dallas, and did that for 8 years. Training people on Revit, architecture, structure, MEP. I got involved in 3D laser scanning with Leica, high definition survey equipment. I've started doing more process consulting. So I've worked with, whether it's large private owners that are large grocery companies here in the Southeast, or whether they're Freeman, even the convention company, I work for them as a consultant, just doing like 3D integration and process improvement for them. And one of those customers was a Finnish elevator company, Kone, K-O-N-E, and they hired me to be their global BIM solution owner. And so basically like an implementation guy for them, working across all their front lines across the globe, and did that for 5 years. And after leaving Kone, now I'm a hardware guy, right? It's a little bit of a leap, but I was software. Then I learned much more about elevators than one person should know. It's kind of nice to just walk into the box, hit the button, and go, and not have to think about this machine working all around you. That still hangs with me a little bit, the elevator days. And so now I've been with Dell for 2.5 years.
So the Kone elevators are kind of special, aren't they? Like they've got kind of a claim to fame. Well, aren't they like the machine room-less elevator? They developed the machine room-less elevator.
Yeah. They don't do any hydraulic elevators.
Yeah.
Right. So hydraulic elevators, they're difficult to install. They're dirty. They're low. The power consumption is not great on it. So they're all about efficiency. And I have nothing but the highest regard for the work that they do at Kone. They are really the only sole elevator company, right? That's all that they do. And and it's not just what's cool about elevators and these companies. It's not just about like, here's a chair, here's a table, go install it. They install and they service, and so you have this like life cycle partnership with the building. Which is awesome.
You're speaking like you're one of us.
I used to be for sure. I like to kid myself into believing I still am, because I still love construction. I still fell in love with the industry the same way. I'm very lucky to be working for such a large, well-known company that's not in construction, but to be able to represent that industry is it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Well, then you came into Dell. And then you handed Tyler a rugged device. And things got rocky there for a minute because you brought me to the table.
Well, Tyler, I've been following you guys for a long time, into my Kone days. And then when I got the Dell job and I saw that you had kind of started this effort to market towards the industry, I thought, man, this is a guy I should work with.
Yeah.
I should go send him like the most awesome stuff and see what he can do with it.
What did you do with it, Tyler?
I did not do anything special. That's for sure. Nothing crazy.
Out with it, man. What'd you do with it?
So this has become something of lore that we're going to out today. So you sent me a brand new Rugged Extreme laptop. Right?
Beautiful machine. Beautiful.
It's pretty sick, man.
Really
like it really is. Like I got it. I was like, this is awesome. This is really cool. And we said, hey, we're gonna shoot a Construction Brothers video about this, kind of skit based, something kind of funny, out on a job site, and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna dunk it in water. I'm gonna throw mud on it. I'm gonna
like
get
a champ.
Yeah, it was great.
Took it like a champ.
It did. All right. And I found the failure point. And the failure point is a 40,000 pound boom lift running over it. So
who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed?
It's rugged. It's rugged as all heck. It is. It is.
We found the point at which it breaks, and we found that within 15 minutes of being on site.
Very quick.
It was very, very quick.
Quite the escalation.
It was quite the escalation. It wasn't our boom lift. Honestly, we got permission to be on the site, and we asked one of the guys, "Hey, can you come over here and run over this thing?" Because Dave said that a truck could run over it, and so naturally, I was thinking, yeah, boom lift truck, should be about the same. Right, I had no idea that boom lifts weighed that much.
For the record, I'm not sure if Dave ever said a truck could drive over it, but
that's what I heard.
It sounds right. Shout out to Dave Ford. It's not your responsibility. Tyler takes full responsibility.
I do take full responsibility for breaking that.
There is a vast difference between even a light duty truck.
Yeah.
And the 40,000 pound boom lift,
which
is counterweighted heavily because of the man load that can extend well beyond its center of gravity.
I know that now. I didn't know that at the time. So yeah, my thing was, it was so much fun getting on the phone with you that next time and just being like, hey, Can you send me another one, because that last one something happened to it. And
how that actually happened? You made me watch the video while you watched me watch the video to get my reaction, and then
I pulled the laptop out, I think, and I showed it to you guys.
And you showed it to me. Yeah, me and Dave, I think, saw that at the same time.
I remember Dave just sitting there being like, "Oh, that's not gonna."
He goes, "Oh no!"
Yeah, there it is. Yep, sure. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was our first time working together, Tyler, and somehow we're still here, still doing it.
Somehow, some way. So there you go, everybody. Just there's the limitation of a rugged device.
Pretty high threshold.
It's pretty. Hey, listen, we cut up the other stuff too. Like I chucked it in some red Georgia clay, like some muddy clay, hosed it off, and I also stuck it in I put it underwater completely and just open face, everything. And it it cranked right up, and I was still playing with the model and stuff.
I mean,
that was pretty legit, awesome.
Oh yeah. Those machines are made for some very extreme environments. They're not a ball bearing. They can't be put absolutely anywhere. But yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting area of computers on a construction site and in the field is rugged devices.
Yeah.
And what's out there right now if it's not rugged? Maybe it's a regular laptop. Maybe it's an iPad.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just a phone or whatever phone they have on them.
Yeah.
And so rugged has a place on that site.
Yeah.
But just like you wouldn't put any one of those other devices under such severe strain, you can knock around a rugged device quite a bit.
Yeah.
In some of the most extreme environments that can be found.
Yeah.
They're awesome equipment, but with some logical limitations.
Which is where I struggle most. My ADHD gets in there and everything just kind of goes to crap sometimes. Anyway, but so we did the rugged test, but then we said, all right, Tyler, you're not going to work on this stuff anymore. It's too much money that you're costing us. So we started working on the precision stuff, which is in more your camp and what you're focused on day to day. And it also falls back in line with what you were doing with Kone and some of the training and all of your background. So give us a kind of high-level look of where we're at in technology for computers and hardware right now. What people kind of need to know. That's a pretty broad question, but just kind of give us a landscape view.
It's very much kind of a black box, kind of a mysterious thing. What's going on inside the computer that people are using to run all this software?
Yeah,
and so I had to learn a lot after joining Dell about what exactly is so demanding about these applications. What parts of these machines are pushed the hardest?
Yeah.
And then how do you configure a machine that doesn't just do one thing well, that does a bunch of things well?
Yeah.
And it really used to be you'd go buy a computer and they'd say, all right, what's your software? Revit? Gotcha. Here's our Revit list. Well, almost no Revit user just uses Revit.
Yeah.
Everybody's using a bunch of stuff and it changes project to project. So getting a view of like we'll call them workstations, but they're like high performance computers, right? Getting a sense of what's going on, what new innovations are happening that actually matter to the building industry and the geospatial industry. And it turns out there's a lot. I did not know that not only do new computer products get released on a regular schedule, sometimes every year, not always every year, but also the components that go inside them get released every year. And just like new software advancements, I saw the new Revit 2025 came out.
I heard about that.
I'm looking through the features. I'm like, I wonder who's using this. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that do a lot of topo services, but beside the point. What happens inside, the innovations that happen inside of a computer apply broadly, right? If you give somebody a machine that is brand new with the newest Intel Core Ultra 9 processor, and they compare that to an 11th gen, that's 3 generations ago, a core processor, they're going to physically feel a faster machine, faster open times, faster response times, faster import and export, things that are kind of frustration factors.
Yeah.
It's not, revolutionizing what it means to use a computer necessarily, but even those generational leaps, they matter.
Yeah.
And, some of the newest generational leaps have to do with what a lot of people are probably reading about, which is AI.
Yeah.
Right? And not just AI development, but the everyday use of AI, and not just in the cloud, but how AI happens on the machine right in front of you. And turns out that we're all already using it.
Yeah.
Right? We're already interacting with those AI workloads. It's already impacting where that happens on the machine. And in the box, right, in the machine, you have a lot of change on where that compute is happening and how it's happening. So if you think about like terms that people should have some, kind of familiarity with, CPU, right?
Right.
Oh, it's an Intel CPU. What is it? Oh, it's a Core 7. Okay, well, there's another layer, which is what generation is it? Or it's a GPU, right? Graphics. It's an NVIDIA. Okay, it's an NVIDIA what? It's an NVIDIA RTX 2000. All right, so that little coded segment tells me, okay, that's a 3 generations ago or 2 generations ago. Because now, since then, there's been the A2000, the Ampere generation, and the 2000 Ada. Yeah. So that one extra layer of knowledge helps you understand not just this kind of generic brand naming, but actually the power behind it. And the AI story is huge. It's huge for NVIDIA. Yeah. It's huge for Intel, and it's huge for Dell.
Yeah.
And the introduction of the neural processing unit, the NPU, which is now on that 14th gen Intel Core processor, that's a low power, low latency processing unit. So things that maybe were on a higher power GPU draining your battery, and I'm talking simple things that people use. This is not like, speaking into a microphone, design me a building and it happens. Yeah. We're talking about things like background blur, right? If you turn your camera on and your background is blurred, that's an AI function. It's an AI feature.
Yeah.
Where is that happening on your machine? Well, you don't really care where that's happening on your machine. But behind the scenes, it absolutely matters, right? If that's on a GPU, higher power, right? Lower battery life.
Yeah.
If that happens on an NPU, low latency, low power, right? Now that shifts, nothing functionally changes. You still hit the same buttons, but behind the scenes, it's shifting where that compute's happening. And that's kind of the most exciting things happening in the PC world is, the fighting for share and trying to find the right places to do these types of specialized compute that don't feel that special. They just feel like something that should, press a button and work.
Yeah. One of the AI things that you had mentioned to me that I think is more new is in reality capture. AI is being implemented a lot more for registration, right? Like the stitching of each one of the scans together, that sort of thing, it's being implemented there a lot more.
Yeah, and there's a lot in reality capture. I mean, reality capture is such a huge term. As far as like object identification and classification in a traditional like point cloud LiDAR type of scan, that's pretty important, right?
Right.
It's really hard to work with a point cloud. It's exciting. it's your machine heats up. It's a lot of data at once. But to understand what you're looking at, if only the machine could help me classify.
Yeah.
And almost kind of create layers in something that is just points and, red, green, blue type of colors. So that's a big deal. The other side of that is kind of the more photogrammetry side of reality capture.
Yeah.
Neural radiance fields and Gaussian splatting and these really strange terms.
Yeah.
Which basically mean I can take a few pictures or I can take a video and I can generate a mesh or point cloud off of that without having a terrestrial-based LiDAR scanner or drone-based LiDAR.
Yeah.
Now, they're all different applications kind of that fall under reality capture. But everything I just described, the object identification, the ability to create a mesh from a video or pictures, that's all AI features that are happening. Those are primarily happening on GPU, on using CUDA cores on NVIDIA RTX graphics.
Right. And then the NPU is going to come in and offload some of those other tasks as well to kind of balance things out and kind of make it a little bit more powerful across the board, right?
Yeah. The NPU has to be enabled by the software vendors. We call them ISVs, right? They have to use that functionality. The people that are using that functionality right now, it's mainly Microsoft.
Yeah.
Right? Microsoft and Intel work very closely to make sure that Windows 11 can offload some of those tasks and put them on a lower power NPU. And that Teams background blur, the audio correction, taking away extra noise in the audio, those are all AI features.
Yeah.
It's not, this far-fetched humanoid thing folding T-shirts at the Gap, right? It's a little lower tech than that, it seems. But I turn my camera on every meeting I can, less than 8 people. And I live in my house where I work. So that background blur and those virtual backgrounds really, really do help me make it seem like I have a clean house, which helps a lot, really. You got to keep the image up a little bit.
I was wondering why you always had that on. All right, we know now.
I got a pretty good virtual background, and people will say, "Is that your house?" I'm like, "Oh no, that's not my house."
One day.
I like practically. I want to come back for the people in our audience that are probably lost in some of the technical terminology. And I mean, so what this translates to is having the right tool for the job at hand. And when we're talking about offloading tasks and battery life, okay, I'm using the software well. Things are being pressed into places where they need to be. So at the end of the day, I get a longer period of time with my battery, which is what, as like a project manager, I'm running around all over the place. I care about that. Like, I need a bunch of power, so I need something that can hit hard, but I also need that thing to last, because if it drains the battery in like an hour, that's not helping me out. So all of this boils down into more power and longer use time. Is that pretty fair?
That's pretty fair. And I don't want to diminish the fact that the GPUs that are coming out right now and some of the higher frequency CPUs are still going to drain power. And if you demand that of your machine while it's not, connected to a power source, yes, it will drain the battery.
Sure.
But balancing where that compute happens, finding lower power compute options, that's really where it's at. GPUs are going wild. GPUs are going absolutely wild. There are now compute-only headless GPUs by NVIDIA that need a paired, like, actual graphic output GPU just for compute power. That obviously is not going to be a low power consumption type of environment. But if I'm a project manager, what I'm doing is I'm using Bluebeam. I'm opening up files. I'm attending Teams meetings when we're sharing video, and I'm collaborating. Well, that's still a lift on your machine. It's not something that you just want to do on your phone. It's something that you need a workstation to be able to handle in an effective way. Everyone's had the experience of taking their laptop and it's hot, right? You put it on your lap, you're like, holy cow, that is really hot. That's power consumption. And heat for all this is absolutely the enemy. So the engineers on our team and the precision workstation team, a lot of what they're trying to do is mitigate heat. And heat will throttle things down. So heat will actually cause you not to get all the power out of your CPU if you're running a really hot GPU. So all these things, it's not one thing in particular. They work together. And also all these folks they're gonna tax their machines different ways on different days of the week. So it's not even like having the right tool for the job. It's like having the right tool for any job. And for the next 3 years, you're going to have to make sure that this is going to be able to handle everything that's current and everything that's coming both technologically and also what people are around you are trying to implement.
So you were an early Revit user.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember we used to talk about how we'd say Revit's kind of a pig, like it was a resource hog or whatever. Like it was doing a lot and therefore took a lot. And there was a lot of stalls and pauses and different things where you're going, is this about to crash or like what's going on?
Yeah.
So, but those pauses have come down, but it's insane how much a pause gives you the opportunity to like fly over to a different task.
Sure.
So having things happen.
Yeah.
It's a deal. Like it's a productivity deal.
It really is. I'll speak from an ADHDer's perspective here. It's really important that I can stay on task, right? Like maintain that focus. And yeah, anytime there's a pause or something that occurs, that is an opportunity for me to get distracted. And I don't necessarily want that. And it's not that somebody's over there in the corner like you saying, hey, get your job done. But for me, like I don't want to have to stay late. I want to be home on time. And I've got to get these, 100 drawings scrubbed before I go home. And if things are taking a long time, then crap, I might end up here until 9.
Yeah. And
that's a story for a lot of people right now, I think.
I 100% experienced that. I was one of the unfortunate few that when my boss at the time saw that I could do renderings inside of Revit, for a high school that they're like, yeah, let's do that. And so, I would be remoting into my machine and having it go overnight. Then I'd show up the next day. I'd have, one face that didn't have a material map to it. And so there was a lot of time. I actually got my LEED accreditation during that time because I had so much extra time to study. I'm not kidding. So much extra time to study. And it was very frustrating. My boss would come around my desk and ask me what's going on, and they're doing that little bucket rendering, and I would tell him, if my machine's working, then I'm working, and he did not enjoy that. He thought that was not what he wanted to hear at all. But it was true. I was stuck. Now that has come so far. Mm-hmm. That has come so far. Real-time rendering tools, with the properly sized GPU. That's gotten so much better.
Yeah.
Twinmotion and Enscape and just Lumion, all these things. And plus the backbone of that, which is a GPU that has to make that happen. But yeah, no, I was very, very frustrated. But let's be frank. Anybody today with the highest performance machine available can build a model in Revit that will react slowly. It's not a magic button. You get the right machine and all this stuff goes away. But that little frustration factor, and you click on something Revit and it like does that little circle and then, okay, it's selected. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, okay, it's selected. That's all about CPU frequency. It's all about CPU frequency. And if you check your CPU frequency right now, I'm going to guess it's in like 2.5, depending on how old your machine is, maybe up to 3 gigahertz. The newest Core Ultra 9s are up to 6. So that's single core clock speed, but now that pause is starting to be condensed. And some of that's going to be the hard work the great folks at Autodesk do with Revit and all their new features. But a lot of it is also advancements in the silicon and how that's being used inside the workstation.
So I want to clarify too, because this was something that I still to this day struggle to understand, because you have Core and you have Xeon.
Sure.
Can you kind of separate those two and tell us like when the best time to get a Xeon is? Because I feel like that could be very helpful for people as they're navigating, like what machine do I need to get?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah. They're really recognizable brands of CPU with Intel. And it's a little confusing because if you look just a few years ago, there were a lot more Xeon. Like Xeon was like the workstation CPU.
Right.
And now if you look at the Dell portfolio, the Xeon processors are only available on our largest, most scalable tower workstations, the 5000s and the 7000 series towers, the big guys.
Yeah, right.
Everything else is Core. And it was put to me by an Intel colleague of mine, Jonathan Patton, at a convention. He said, Xeon is like a bus. And you might have lower clock speeds. It may not be going as fast, but the Core is like a Corvette. It can take you and maybe one other person, and it'll get you there real fast. But the bus may go a little slower, but it can take you and all your friends and family there all together, right? And what that amounts to is they all have lots of cores, but how many are high frequency performance cores? Mm-hmm. In the core processor world, Intel Core, there are some P cores, performance cores, some efficiency cores, right? So not everything is going to go that fast, but things like Revit, things that are single-threaded, they will go top speed. And then Xeon may have the same number of cores, maybe 24 cores, but they're all going to be performance cores. And so if you're doing something really heavily parallel, Xeon. If you're doing more like modeling and documentation using whether it's SolidWorks, whether it's Revit, they all kind of work the same. These are serial modeling applications, and the core processors are really advantaged there, right? Just that little click, pause, frustration factor.
When you're saying parallel, can you define that a little bit more for me? Like when you say, if you're working something parallel, what kind of workflow are we talking there?
Yeah, so a parallel workflow, kind of the most recognizable ones would be rendering.
Okay.
Right? Is that what GPUs have is they have, thousands of cores.
Yeah.
And they can break that up and they can render everything at once, everything at the same time. And if it's low threaded, then you can't. So I model a wall, I place a door, I move a door. There's only so much parallelism, if I said that well enough, that you can do with something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So is it graphics accelerated? Graphics accelerated means that I can bunch this up into a bunch of different piles. I can do them all at the same time. End result happens at the same time. Wow, that was so fast. You know what? Let's do more cores. Ooh, more cores, even faster. And so if you have workflows like that, and there are reality capture workflows that are heavily multi-threaded. There are simulation workflows that are heavily multi-threaded. Obviously, rendering is heavily multi-threaded. But rank and file, I'm opening up Revit. I'm a production designer, and I'm just going at it all day, and I'm modeling and zooming around. I'm changing things. I'm responding to red lines. I'm actively producing documents. Those are primarily going to be low-threaded or single-threaded applications.
Okay.
Gotcha. I've got one. So for the Revit user that's listening, like for the person that maybe they want to champion it for their team, but they really, really just want the melt your face off like machine for themselves. So what would they get? Right? Like what if
What's
you were
melt
gonna
your face off?
Yeah, like if you were gonna outfit somebody and you were like, okay, if I was gonna get a Revit machine, I'd get this joker. What would you get?
Well, there's a fork in the road of whether it's a mobile or whether it's a tower.
Okay, so let's go tower. That's it. My main workflow, I'm at the desk. So let's go tower.
Yeah. So there's a Precision Workstation 3680. So it's the 3000 series tower. It's the bulldog of the industry. And you go to a Core Ultra 9, right? That's going to give you up to 6 gigahertz of clock speed, which is outstanding. You definitely feel that kind of speed. I would load it up with RAM. Now, RAM, there's two factors. How much RAM do you have and how fast of RAM do you have? There's been a lot of advancements in these mega transfers per second speed of RAM. So I wouldn't go less than 64, and I'd want to have an over 5,000 mega transfers per second. And it says right there when you order a machine, 5,600 MT per second. So you go look a couple of years ago, that might have said 3,000 or 2,000 mega transfers per second. So I definitely want that. And then I want at least an NVIDIA RTX 2000 Ada card in it. It used to be that you had to climb up to like the top of the GPU stack to get something that would really run well. Now, Revit doesn't use a GPU that well, granted. But if you're using Revit and you get Twinmotion, or you're that close to using Enscape or Lumion to drive something like really wild, like really where your boss is seeing the trees wave and like people love that. I remember doing bucket rendering in Revit. My boss would come after me. 5 hours it's been rendering. He says, "Oh, the brick's a little pink." It's like, oh, no. But you have a 2000 Ada card, and you can go higher than that, but you can pretty much do anything you want to in those realms. And you can do quite a bit if you're interacting with reality capture. But like I said, nobody is just doing one piece of software. And so you kind of need something to catch all these pieces, and you need it to be able to work and transfer in between itself really well. So you're talking about PCIe ports and things that are pretty technical. But really, you want the fastest transfer speeds, the fastest processing speeds, and you want a healthy amount of RAM or VRAM in your GPU. Those are the main things.
So let's go reality capture guy that's more mobile.
Well, they need a topped-out machine, a topped-out 7000 series machine. So there's a 7780 Precision Mobile, and you'd put 128 gigabytes of RAM in there. You'd do a Core Ultra 9 only because there's not a Core Ultra 2000 or whatever. Like they'll really get use out of as much hardware as you throw at them. The GPU side, depending on how much they're trying to leverage things like object identification or strapping on a VR headset, you may want to go all the way up to like a 5000 ADA card, and so that's an NVIDIA RTX 5000 ADA. It's just going to have a ton of VRAM. It's going to have a ton of cores to do any kind of processing you want, and it's topped out. It's as fast as you can go. The reality capture folks also have a storage need that is greater than almost anybody else anywhere. And so I rarely ever see reality capture folks deal with less than 4 terabytes of storage, which is a lot more than a Revit user. Even the Revit users can't really get away with they can maybe get away with 1 terabyte now. But if you're still having to install multiple versions of that monster, you might get some more use out of 2 terabytes, but nothing like the reality capture folks.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
One thing I'd add to the hard drive aspect of that is make sure is NVMe, right? Or is it?
Right. It's a port style, so PCIe Express 4.0, 5.0, yeah.
That is life-changing. Just having something on from a hard drive perspective that's instant access. And man, they get bigger now too. You can get a 4 terabyte, I believe in that.
Oh yeah, you can. Absolutely.
And so having that internal to where, okay, I'm just transferring all of my data over to this internal hard drive and not having to have an external drive for that.
Yeah.
That speeds up the workflow like crazy.
Hey, reality capture is still an industry that they FedEx hard drives around to share data.
Yep.
Like, I know we love the cloud and it seems like kind of all encompassing, but you're telling me that I can't pull that data down and get it up fast enough that I can just FedEx you a hard drive?
Yeah.
Like, we're not as far as we think we are. If that kind of stuff is still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And those generational leaps on those NVMe ports, that's, if you go from 2 to 3, that's a double, that's twice as fast.
Yeah.
You go 3 to 4, it's twice as fast. And it all has to do with data transfer, right? How fast can I compute on a CPU? Well, that's fine. How fast can I read and write and pass between these components?
Mm-hmm.
That's another layer into kind of building that whole system out.
Let's play with that thought a little bit. Like, we're not quite as far as we think. As an industry, we're watching all of the technology around us, and it feels like, all right, everybody knows, everybody's doing this, but there's a real case to be made for the fact that we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot farther to go. So, what do you think?
We spend a lot of time on market data, and we really pay attention to our software vendors. We want to see where their growth is happening, how it's happening. And what we see is, and I think anybody could probably guess this, healthy growth. Healthy growth for the software vendors. They're selling more products. They're selling broader. They're, the cost of subscriptions and just the cost of the tools, has gone up so much. And then you can go to a conference and you can attend the conferences and you can see the keynotes and even the sessions and be like, wow, look at what everybody's doing. Everybody's doing all this awesome stuff. But if you spend time with people that are actually doing it away from those conferences, you'll realize that we're really just talking about the top 2%, the top 5%. And I love the top 2%, top 5%. Yeah. I love them. I think I always like to think of them pushing that ceiling higher. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the thing that is more realistic is the 95% that are still transitioning from 2D to 3D. That's still a very viable business for a lot of service providers out there, is implementation of 3D technology. And, that represents the bulk of the industry. Even someone like, just take the generic term of a project manager. right? A project manager may have been able to get away with building a building or interacting off of a fax machine 15 years ago. And maybe they've moved to, they got a machine at their office that they go, do, or maybe they have a mobile, or maybe they have a tablet that they use. But as all those kind of top 5% of use cases come out and people are pushing that limit, they want to push all that technology down. They want to make it usable for those project managers. I talked to a guy at GeoWeek that was doing this amazing NERF and Gaussian splatting technology, and he was a team of one. He was the guy that knew it in that firm. He was a specialist, and he said, "I can do all this stuff, but I can't get it to my project managers." So even a company that has that one guy that's rocket shot, like awesome, doing the best stuff. He had a problem with all of his users, right? There's your 95%. Inside of a single company, how do they have a tool that they can even leverage this? He said he was having to chop this thing up into such small pieces that they didn't want to use it. It didn't seem useful, or it was very frustrating to them. So it's organizational, top and bottom, but it's also within the organization itself. You can't hide from this technology for very long and stay relevant. And so all those project managers out there that have kind of kept their head down are starting to need more powerful machines to leverage what that upper percentage is doing.
Well, the owners are going to start demanding a lot of this stuff too. So if you're prepped for that, if an owner comes in with a demand, you're ready to meet that demand, right?
You certainly wouldn't want to take on extra expenses to meet that demand when you can see what's going on around us, right? You can see the software vendors working to improve saturation in the market and doing that. Not done yet, definitely not done yet, but how do you prepare your firm to take that on? By the way, this whole industry, and you guys know this, it's all small business.
Yeah.
It's not all small business, but I would venture to say 75% what Dell would consider small business. They're not going to have an IT department all the time. So, I have these, how do I manage it? What happens when something goes wrong? I got tickets and service right? So there's all sorts of options, even within Dell, that are trying to offload some of those IT services to help small businesses out, manage themselves like a larger enterprise. But the technology does need management too. You don't just sit down in front of somebody and walk away from them.
Yeah, we started something a long time ago here internally for IT, and it was called the EDDIE strategy. And so, yeah, Eddie,
not working out so good.
It's not working out so good.
Yeah, we're getting more obsolete by the day.
I think that's common, though. I was that guy. You become the de facto CAD manager, the de facto IT person, and that's a lot. It's also that resource. I'm going to guess they're more valuable in other ways besides taking up revs for them doing IT work. That's a lot of some of the more exciting things going on at Dell. They have Apex managed device service where you can actually have a monthly subscription to kind of hand over a lot of those IT functions within an organization. If you're a small business and you have your super user, Eddie the super user doing all that legwork.
I don't know about that.
trying to build him up a little bit.
Nah, don't do that.
Eddie the little bit above average user for the team of 5.
But it's important, right? It is important, and making sure that you're saving those resources. I have a friend that worked in advertising, and he would call the creatives special ponies. Like, they're the special ponies. You don't want to disrupt them. Yeah. And I kind of feel that way about the super users, right? They're kind of special ponies. Like if they go away, there's a huge gap, right? A little magic is gone. Yeah. And so how do you protect those folks and give them the tools that they need, and also offload some of the things you don't want them spending time on? So there's a lot of, obviously Dell will love to sell you all those services, but from a small business standpoint, if you want to take yourself seriously in a sense of having an IT department that you're not really sized for. Yeah. Right. You have to start looking for those services outside your walls. Yeah. And Dell's a part of that conversation.
Otherwise, the CEO is doing literally everything. I've never felt that before. Yeah. Ever, personally.
I think in any firm less than 50 people, you're probably not going to have a dedicated IT person at all. And that number is probably higher than that.
Yeah.
And so, we have labor shortage. We have talent shortage. Let's offload what we can offload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, dude, this is very helpful to know kind of what sorts of machines that we should be looking at, and also kind of just getting the landscape of where everything's at. So I want to hit you with our megaphone question, though. Right? So if we gave you a megaphone in around 60 seconds to speak to the whole industry, what would you want to say?
60 seconds, that's all? A rugged device is not a ball bearing. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is, when you're considering your technology stack, you can't just throw more software and expect your hardware to catch up. You have to get involved a little bit in the details that you haven't been involved with before. So that means putting on the decoder ring and understanding a little bit more about the components inside your system, instead of just, this piece of junk that somebody else got me or some hand-me-down machine. Is you got to educate yourself so that you know what's important.
Yeah.
And it's the elevator, right? Yeah, I don't want to know what's inside, but here, because it impacts every software that you use and a lot of that frustration factor, you really have to. You got to get more involved in what's inside that machine.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming all the way to Millersville, Georgia to hang out with us for an hour or two, man. It was really good to see you here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.